Okay, thank you very much. It's my great pleasure to be with you today. I see so many both familiar faces and new faces. And I want to express my gratitude for you staying to the very last session of the conference here. If I can work it, I'd like to see if we can all get out a little bit early from this. I know many of you, like myself, have planes to catch and probably tight connections. So we'll see if we can go through the material quickly while still giving you a good experience of what we've been working on. So it's my privilege and honor today to talk about some very exciting technology that we've created to help make the creation of causal loop diagrams from medium and larger size groups, or from groups that are physically distributed, more convenient, more accessible, and less constrained by the physical surroundings. So I'm going to be describing a system which has been built over the course of the past couple months, which helps use web technologies, particularly collaborative web technologies, as you'll see in systems such as Google Docs or Office 365, to allow multiple participants, physically distributed, to simultaneously create causal loop diagrams in a shared experience. Okay? To do this, I'm going to briefly situate us with respect to some basic motivations for this work, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to see the system in action as myself and a remote collaborator use it to build up a smaller but non-trivial causal loop diagram. And then I will turn it over to you folks so that whoever here is equipped with a device that can include a web browser can actually use the system yourselves to build up a causal loop diagram, which I'll be showing you. Okay? I'm going to try to keep my comments on the slides brief, so we can spend more time together actually using the system. The system is at what I would call a sort of early beta phase, maybe late alpha. There's definitely still some kinks to work out, but it's in pretty good shape, and certainly much further along than the system we looked at yesterday. Okay, so as some of you will know, I've been working with agent-based modeling and then system dynamics modeling for respectively about 25 and then 20 years, with applications particularly in the past 15 to 20 years focused almost exclusively in the health area. This work has brought us in contact with many opportunities to make use of collaborative modeling engagements, which almost invariably go on to turn into opportunities for quantitative modeling with agent-based and hybrid methods, with system dynamics, and many combinations thereof, and with other techniques like decision analysis and computational statistics. Our work has been conducted with partners from the federal, the provincial, and the local levels, particularly across Canada, but also in a number of U.S. jurisdictions, including some exciting work with the LA Department of Public Health and UCLA. Within this area, it's long been my reflection, and this partly reflects my long time in the system dynamics community, my conviction, the fact that often, while the model as an artifact offers some real insights for the clients, it's often the modeling process, the process of reflection, systematic reflection on what we know, what we don't know, where the uncertainties are, what information we have available to us, what that evidence really relates to in the system, that this often provides the greatest insight rather than just the model as an artifact. In many ways, I share the conviction that models are learning objects. They're tools for learning more quickly, more effectively, and more deeply from whatever evidence is available, so that we can more quickly falsify our understandings of the world and advance our understanding. And in this area, models help transdisciplinary teams to function more effectively, and in fact, bring them together by serving as what many people call boundary objects. So they serve as a common point of discussion by people from many backgrounds, where each of them can point to parts of the model and have a common understanding of elements of a real-world system that they're talking about, transcending jargon, moving beyond disciplinary barriers, and talking about a common set of issues with reference to the concrete representations in the models. And having this common point of understanding actually can bring teams together, can help break down those barriers of status and position within a broader system, and allow for freer exchanging of ideas, taking understanding out of people's heads and putting it into the open domain. Now, the reflection I'd like to put out there is that the modeling approach and the software used in a modeling project often has a major impact on the capacity to use models as boundary objects. Many of you perhaps will know me for my work with agent-based models, which for decades were hampered by a mode of description that was not embracing of community-based participatory work. We've moved beyond that with many modeling tools now for the agent-based area, it remains a point of weakness, I'd say, of that area at a relative level. By contrast, in system dynamics community, there's long been appreciation for decades about the fundamental role of the modeling process and the importance of bringing stakeholders along to secure ownership, buy-in, to elicit understanding, et cetera. And one of the prime tools we use for that in the model mapping phase of modeling projects are causal loop diagrams, often elaborated with other elements such as stocks and flows and system structure diagrams to allow us to capture people's understanding of a structure, to capture their perceptions of a system, and generally to elicit the basis that for understanding that might go on for a quantitative model. So causal loop diagrams are recommended by many virtues, including their ability to be readily understood by participants from a wide variety of backgrounds. We found this in our modeling engagements. My colleague Peter Hoffman shares a story where he was leading a model mapping exercise in rural India, and they were meeting with the tribal council for this village in rural India. And it happened to be a group entirely made up of men from that village. And they were discussing the issues behind environmental degradation and some of the impacts socioeconomically on the village when a woman showed up from the village. And she was actually looking for her husband, and he was there, but she was interested in what was going on, and she was kind of looking at the diagram and hearing the comments on it, and then she walked up to the diagram and she said, "No, you are missing, two key factors in this system. You need to add this and this at this point of the system, and those affect these things." She had, in short, looked at the diagram, heard enough of the discussion that she was able to ascertain many of the fundamental components of causal loop diagramming and was able to contribute to that discussion, able to bring knowledge forward to advance the discussion. And indeed, those elements were then worked into the diagram. That's a powerful thing, and that's a thing that can't be overemphasized in terms of its importance in helping a wide variety of voices speak within our modeling efforts, helping make sure our modeling efforts are empowering across all levels of the power hierarchy. Causal loop diagrams, in my mind, are a very, very powerful way of engaging with participants from the very start of a modeling process, securing that ownership, buy-in, and trust and enthusiasm from the get-go. Now, there are some challenges with these types of mechanisms. While extremely powerful, they do have some difficulties that we've experienced in modeling engagements. One of them is that often you have to bring together individuals. And you think about a big municipality like LA, Toronto or Vancouver, it may be a non-trivial effort to bring people around from the entire area to this location for the sake of a day. Think about LA traffic, right? And yet that co-location is very important if they're to add their mark onto a diagram. It can be hard to scale these encounters to larger size. If you are depending on a physical representation like a whiteboard or flip charts, or as we've often used, large sheets of paper, perhaps up on a wall, it can be difficult to have a very large crowd able to observe what's going on clearly and to add to it with markers or whatever form you use, with sticky notes. They may have to wait in line. They can't see clearly around the people ahead of them. In other cases, of course, we have a designated modeler with their hands on the keyboard adding things as they get mentioned and as the links are elicited. But then there's some power structure issues there. People have to go through this modeler, through this person with their hands on the keyboard. And there may be some hesitancy on the part of individuals who feel on the lower side of the status spectrum to be able to secure the attention of that person. And they can't readily go out and speak as clearly, particularly if there are language barriers. If they speak Spanish and this person is speaking English, or in Canada, French and English, there can be some barriers. I'm referring also to that issue of multiple languages. Sometimes the same diagram needs to communicate to multilingual communities. You have doctors in the room, and then you have French-speaking Métis or those speaking indigenous languages in Canada, and you want to communicate to these groups on an equal basis with a diagram. It can be hard to do if you're limited to flip charts. Sometimes there's a lot. I'm sure those who have conducted these sort of engagements will have seen this in spades. When people crowd around a diagram, there's a lot of importance to what gets captured in the diagram, but there's often a lot of importance for what's not captured directly. The conversations that take place between people as they're considering where to add something on, what to add, how to conceptualize something. Does this affect that directly or only through this other variable? Sometimes there are justifications that are trotted out, or even stories in that process as people speak to each other. And while very important for spreading knowledge, there's not really the ability for the diagram to capture all those stories or justifications in a fulsome way. There can be elements of that, or there can be attempts to record some of the things that come out when people have to speak publicly to the person who's maintaining the diagram. But sometimes a lot of those stories are lost. And finally, a lot of the times these do rely on hand-built diagrams, which can get very messy. I mean, you probably have seen this yourself, right? These diagrams can get very cluttered. Initially, there's a set of variables that are put close together, and then you want to expand the details for some of them, and you wish you could push them further away. And even if you have flipped, sticky notes, you have to move a bunch of sticky notes over, and it can be messy. In Australia, we use sticky tack and strings for some related diagrams for agent-based and hybrid methods models, and the strings get tangled, and it's messy. Changes are burdensome, sometimes it's unreliable, and there's limited confines of space. So in order to provide an alternative to complement traditional techniques, not to replace them, but to try a set of techniques that might have different trade-offs, and to be able to better understand what those trade-offs are, and to advance our sense of what techniques are better for what types of engagements. What the vision was to create a system that I analogize very crudely to Google Docs for causal loop diagrams. In the sense, many of you perhaps are familiar with Google Docs, or it's Microsoft sort of analog Office 365. You can have people from around the world simultaneously editing a document, sometimes chatting about it, sometimes over Skype or Google Hangouts or what have you. while putting it together. But fundamentally, they are editing the document all at the same time. There's not one editing it and then passing it off to the next. They're all modifying it at the same time. And the vision said, my vision of this was, well, if we can do that for documents, why can't we do it for causal loop diagrams? Why can't we do it for diagrams of this sort? And the hope was to allow for multiple potentially distributed users. They could be in the same room. You'll be doing it shortly. Or they could be around the world to collaborate while building up a diagram, and often to exchange some audio at the same time, but to be able to collaborate and see each other's products as they play out, which might stimulate their own ideas. I wanted a simple sharing mechanism here, accessible by multiple types of devices, tablets, phones if needed, PCs, surface computing. A small, simple feature set, and something that will be performant even for hundreds of individuals, potentially even thousands. So that's the vision. I'd like to go demonstrate it. I'd like you to see it, okay? So many of you, I can see, have computers with you. Those who do not, I would suggest partnering up or looking over the shoulder of someone who does. Because while I'll be showing it on the screen, there will be a portion where I'll be showing something fixed on the screen and you'll actually be building up a diagram. So what I'd like you to do is, for this portion, go to this URL, okay? tinyurl.com/ICM 2016, excuse me, ViewCL. I skipped 2 slides, sorry, ViewCL. So not this one, but that one there. This is advancing without my permission, so let me just change this to so that it doesn't do that, okay? So here we go. ICM 2016 ViewCL. Now, if you do that, you should see something similar to this. Do you see that?
Can you go back to that?
Sure. Here you go. Yeah, it should be. If you have a browser. Yeah. Sorry. You should see something like this on a tablet, something like this, or on a phone. Okay. I'm going to be watching it on my tablet as for when you're creating a diagram shortly. Okay. So tinyurl.com/ICM 2016 ViewCL. Do you folks see that? You're able to get there? Okay, great. So what I'm going to ask you to do for this one, just so that we can undertake it quickly and without a lot of unexpected things, I'm going to ask you to sit in the observer seat. Okay, we'll then go on and examine a diagram where you're actually going to build it up after that. Okay, you're going to be able to contribute to this in a fulsome way. Okay, so what I've got on the phone, on the Skype here, is a colleague, Garrett Hansen, who's right now the undergrad student who's charged with advancing this. Garrett, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great.
I have one thing for you, though, before proceeding.
Okay.
Mention to them that they need to click that authentication
thank
button,
you.
and after they do so, they should refresh the page.
Appreciate it. That was in my instructions, but I should have emphasized that. Do you see there's an authenticate button there?
I think it's authorized.
Or authorize? Thank you. Authorize. Authorize, do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. You're going to want to push that button, and then it may ask you what, Garrett, to log into your Google account, something like that?
Yeah. Yes, you'll have to log into a valid Gmail
To a valid Gmail or other Google account. It could be, I think, any Google account. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And once you do that, you'll be able to share this diagram. It's like sharing a Google Doc. It needs to sort of get you in a position where you're able to use this app on documents. Okay? Okay. And Garrett, do they have to refresh after that?
Because of the authentication button doesn't disappear, so they They don't have to, but it's worth doing.
Okay, if you want to refresh your screen after that, apologies. Yeah. Then that will disappear and you don't have to worry about it again. Okay. Okay, so that's a one-time thing. You don't have to do that. It's just a one-time thing you have to do the very first time you use this tool. Okay, are we ready to go? Okay. Garrett is back in Canada, back in my home institution, University of Saskatchewan. So he and I are going to be building up a diagram here together. And in order to do that, we're going to use this panel over here, and we're going to successively add variables in and links between them, okay? You'll notice that this is set up to add in variables with various shapes. A shape that looks more like a stock, looks like a round variable and no shape at all. It can add connections with certain polarities and certain loops. Yes?
Mine is actually telling me, please close this window.
Okay, it's saying please close a window. Okay. I would love to be able to look at that, but
Go ahead.
probably you could say okay. Which window is it trying to get you to close?
After I allowed it,
Yep.
to go down.
Yeah, okay. And then is there an okay button? There's no okay? Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, appreciate it. So, and then there's one for drawing loops on, okay? So I'd like to add some elements on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, and Garrett, let's start this, okay? So you're going to, so go ahead, and I will start adding as well, okay? Okay, so here we go. And you'll notice that what I'm doing is for each successive variable, I'm giving it a name, and I'm giving it picking a location here for it. And then we're going to be starting to go and connect them up, okay? So risk of poverty, okay. Unfortunately, we're getting a bit constrained by the size here, okay? So I'm going to move some things around. And then, unfortunately, my screen size on this, because of the projector, is smaller than normal. Dysphoria and stress. Okay. And there we go. Okay. So why didn't that? Dysphoria and stress. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. So have what? Oh, do I? Okay, I must have added it there. Let me go delete that. Thank you. You can delete with the delete button. Okay, so I'm going to start. Oh, so I must have changed an earlier one because previously nutrition was there. Okay, fine. Nutrition, and then we're going to start. I'm going to start connecting them. Garrett also has some more to do, I think, still, right, Garrett? You're going to be doing, the stigmatization sort of elements here, nutrition to health. Okay, hey, come on. Okay, and then health to risk of poverty, and health to, oh, there's two risk of poverties. Okay, oh, great.
That was my fault, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Why don't you delete the other one? Yeah, thank you, Garrett. Okay, so now I've got to reconnect that then to there. Okay, dysphoria and stress. Okay, there we go. Dysphoria and stress is, I'm going to connect it here. Okay. So Garrett, I guess I'll add the top set of variables then, okay? The stigmatization and so on, yeah? Okay. Okay, let's try that again. Stigmatization. Okay, great. Okay, and then perceived employability. I'll just add that in. Perceived employability, and then I'll add in likelihood of unemployment. Okay, there we go. Okay. And finally, capacity for productive work. I'll add in, okay? Okay, glad to see you adding those things, Garrett. Okay, I'm going to start adding in the connections up the top. Now you'll notice that we are adding these things in, and Garrett's moving some things around. I actually won't see, this is one of the shortcomings of the system right now, I actually don't see his movements until he has finished them, okay? I don't see them kind of on the fly as he is dragging things around. Rather, I see it once he has finished it, which is a shortcoming of note, because it can limit the ability to communicate as to what one is doing. Okay, so I'm going to switch now to connect this guy with that guy and this guy with this one. Hey, okay, that's great. This one has a few, I don't want to do that. Come on, get back there. Okay, let's move this around, and then likelihood of unemployment down to risk of poverty. Okay, fine. Okay, come on. There we go. And hey, come on. Okay. Sorry?
Is the idea that you would be talking?
Yeah, that we'd be talking to coordinate, because if we don't have that ability to communicate, given right now that it actually doesn't show things in progress, like dragging while it's dragging going on, it can be easy for me to not know what he's up to and end up duplicating that something he's doing right now. So in other words, I may go try to rearrange something while he's in the midst of rearranging it or what have you. Like this arrow needs to be cleaned up, and for all I know, he could be working on this right now as well. So I'm going to delete this, and so we need to really improve the sort of simultaneously knowledge of what each other is doing. This arrow is not properly connected up here, so I'm going to connect the arrow from likelihood of unemployment. Okay, hey, come on, why aren't you connected?
Yeah,
there we go.
Because I tried to move it at the same time. So.
Oh, okay, yeah, there we go. Okay, so you notice when I drag it, it turns this brown color or yellow color, and that's an indication that it's going to connect properly, okay? And now we've got this kind of orphan arrow. Okay, so how are we doing? I think we're missing one connection from likelihood of unemployment down to this dysphoria and stress. So let me go wire that up, and now I'm going to click on them to I didn't want to create a new arrow, thank you. I'll drag this in order to reroute some of these arrows so they're less ugly. Okay. Well, pretty it ain't. But do you want to clean that up a little bit, Garrett, while I talk? Can you folks see what's going on on your devices?
Yeah, but for this software,
Yeah.
so now you are, audibly communicate with someone there. So
Yeah.
if you, I think that's through other device, not through this software.
No, I'm not doing it through the software.
So
No.
basically, if I use the software, so the other side can see what I'm doing on the map.
Oh, exactly.
They cannot, we cannot, audibly.
No, there's no. We didn't want to reproduce. We didn't want to create Skype.
Okay.
We didn't want to create Google Hangouts because there's good tools for doing that already. And so I didn't see a need to do that.
Okay.
What those tools wouldn't do is give the people the ability to simultaneously create a diagram. That's what we do. We don't try to get into the business of providing audio connections. Now later we might, for reasons I'll talk with you about, but that didn't seem like to us a high priority in the couple months we've been working on this. Okay. Okay. So Garrett's kind of moving things around, but I think you get the essential gist of what's going on here. People can add things in. You can go add these connections in. When you're adding connections, you will be in a mode where you stay in that mode to add connections until you press escape, or until you, what's the other thing that will get them out of that mode, Garrett?
Just clicking the same arrow.
That's right,
again.
clicking this to turn it yellow, right? Yeah, that's right. So you will be in that mode of sort of adding arrows on an ongoing basis. Some of these arrows, we need to change the polarity of some of these arrows. Like, for example, capacity for productive work should not be a plus arrow to likelihood of unemployment. So this needs to be changed to a minus. I do that by just clicking on that. Substance abuse to nutrition should be a minus, and there should be a few others. So this one, substance abuse for capacity for productive work, should be a minus as well. Negative polarity, and there should be a link here. It's missing for capacity for productive work. Oh, excuse me. It should be a plus arrow with perceived employability. Okay. So something along those lines, and then there's another minus arrow that should be hey, come on, get. Okay, I just delete things using the delete key. Okay, so I'm going to select this and switch it over. Okay, obviously a pre-canned example here, but it gives you some flavor for what's going on, right? Okay, so now what I'd like to do is raise a challenge. I'd like you to create a diagram like this for the people in the room. Yes?
So I saw you can change the line color.
Yes.
So why can you change the size of the line?
Right now we can't. Right now we haven't done that yet. You can change the size of these things if they are using a shape here. You can change the sizes of those, but we cannot currently change the size of lines. That's something we'd like to do.
Yeah, to prevent a map like this,
Yep.
the line too narrow.
Fair enough. I think that's a good feedback. Part of the reason for giving this is we've been working on this with 3 undergrads have worked on this at various times since January. Garrett's the latest one. Stephanie Dilsner and Alicia Erker were 2 of the earlier ones who did a tremendous amount of work on it. And we're looking for feedback about what we should prioritize to improve it. So I'll take that into a strong priority on that, improving line thickness in addition to color. Thank you very much. Yes?
One thing I'm thinking is if this is being done in a collaborative setting,
Yep.
We can collaboratively identify the variables
Yes.
to put on there.
Yep.
But while this is happening, everybody may not agree on
That's right.
the linkages. So
Right.
if there was a way to rate the linkages like Facebook,
Yep.
like, unlike.
Yep.
So then you build some consensus.
I love that.
counter that says these many people plus, these many people thumbs down, these people
Love it.
maybe.
Love it. Love it. Okay.
So I'm thinking,
Yes.
I mean, that's a very good suggestion. Also, with causal diagrams, like choosing kind of the right phrase or terminology is important.
Indeed.
Something kind of neutral. So
Yep.
some way, I mean, people might wonder if they're thinking about the same thing, and then also finding the right way to phrase it so
Yep.
that the loop really kind of works.
Right. So one idea would be to allow for suggestions for the name of a variable to be advanced. So that variable might show one name now, but it's not terribly privileged in the sense that there's some other people's suggestions for it. And then ultimately it could be decided from the group by voting or by a core modeling team that we'd like to prefer this name as opposed to that one.
Right.
So I love that idea. That's great. Garrett, if you could copy these down, that would be great. Okay, now.
I got down the first one. I didn't catch that one.
Okay, the second one basically had to do with the fact that just as in software engineering, in these sort of diagrams, naming is key. And you heard me say this many times in my modeling class, Garrett. And so often within a given set of participants, there can be disagreement as to the best names or even the best framing of a variable in terms of exactly how to define it. And being able to capture those different names or conceptualizations of the variable is very valuable. And to be able to recognize, rather than just having people fight over who changed it last, to be able to provide a way to sort of have suggestions put forward and maybe even voted on. Okay.
So something very much like the connection idea where you can
Yeah.
write it positive and negative. You do the
Exactly.
same thing with a list of names.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so a couple tips. To add a component, you click on the appropriate menu. You establish any settings. So if you want to add, for example, a variable called population that's a stock, you could do population. You could choose any settings for its size or width or what have you. And that's going to allow you to sort of add it in to the diagram. And alternatively, you can go and you can label it here, and after the fact call it population and adjust its size. I'm normally named them beforehand, although I noticed just in the past few minutes that in this particular version I'm having trouble reliably adding them after setting those characteristics beforehand. So it seems it may be better to actually add it and then set those characteristics. To delete it, you press delete. To modify an element, you can just click on it. So if I wanted to, change this to from health to health status, I could click on it and modify it here. You can save the diagram up here. I'm not actually sure, Garrett, because I guess this particular one wasn't using the Google the Google Drive API. So I think that may actually be necessary to press this button. But we have another version of a related software, some may have seen yesterday, where that's actually not necessary. Undo and redo up here. These will undo changes, but you have to be aware that they're very fine-grained. So you may have to go back several steps in order to make that one change disappear. You notice the status it disappeared one by one. There's my spelling mistake that I made. Now it's finally back. Oh gosh. Okay. Now I'm in trouble. Okay, I went back too far. So let me add some of those back in. So undo and redo, a little bit finicky, a little bit unfamiliar probably in terms of some of their specifics. Okay. As I said, it's a beta, early beta, and there's a share button up here that you can use to share it with other people. So if you want to share it with someone else so they can modify the diagram, you can do so with this. Alternatively, you can go to your Google Drive, right-click on it, and say share, share with so-and-so, and that will actually allow you to say these people can edit it, these people can only view. We have set this so that you can only view it. Let's go view one where you can do whatever you want with it, okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you now to go to this URL, okay? This is this, let me go back to it there. Oh, come on. ICM 2016 Create Causal Loop Diagram, okay? Create CL. Okay? Now, if you go to that will be a diagram that will look identical. You shouldn't have to press the Authorize button. That's only a first time that you go into this tool with a diagram. But for this one, you'll be able to modify it. Okay. So what I'd like to be able to suggest is that you will try building up this diagram we just saw in this space. And I'm not going to join you because my computer is going to be displaying the diagram that we just built, to wit, this one. Now, naturally, you can improve the aesthetics of it. Okay. So does anyone want this up for a little bit longer? ICM Create Causal Loop. Does that get you there?
It gets us. There's some. It's not a blank screen.
Oh, it's not a blank screen. Okay, let's go see what. Oh, you mean like age is there? Okay, hey man, we were testing it earlier. Fine. Let's go. Okay, now it's blank. And except these things at the top, which are designed to provide you some memory. Unfortunately, the screen size is different than when we planned these out. Press Escape to exit path creation mode. Double click on a connection to add a vertex, and vertices don't appear until the refresh. Okay, so you folks should be able to go start adding things in. I would suggest that you try to create this diagram here. Okay, using this one that you can modify. So I'm going to observe the fruits of your efforts here on my tablet. Okay, so
How did you get that vicious cycle in? I didn't see.
Oh, yeah, for the vicious cycle, thank you. All we did is we went over to here and we chose this one here. And in choosing that, you can put a label that says vicious cycle.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah, you bet. Okay, so meanwhile, I'm going to go on my tablet here to watch your efforts as they transpire. Okay, so now I'm on the Create CL here. Okay. Okay, and looks like I may have a connection issue, so let me make sure I'm logged in here. Okay, good.
No.
Oh wow, you folks are, wow, there's some interesting stuff going on there. Okay, so questions I can answer? So if you want to delete something, again, you can click on it and then press delete and your delete button, not backspace, but delete.
So ideally, this supports both Windows and
Oh yeah,
Mac.
yeah, it supports Windows, Mac, Android, iPhone, whatever, iOS. Now, none of those should cause problems with it. Okay, I'm going to take a peek here. Okay. So Garrett.
Yes,
Yes. Okay. Are you watching this diagram as well?
This one.
I'm attempting to. I'm running into technical difficulties.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, okay. So what I would suggest doing, David, is do this. Click variable, click on the diagram, and then grab it, and then you can say, mortality, whatever. Okay?
This is just me.
Yeah.
It seems to, so it's got me on my website.
Yeah.
But it seems to be not accepting when I.
Authorize. Okay.
Going past that point.
Okay, that's interesting. Haven't seen that. So Garrett, I've got a phone. This is an iPhone? Yeah.
6.
iPhone 6, where for some reason it's not authorizing properly, which is curious.
I think that's because the document has. I'm getting an error now in the console that the document is closed. So for some reason, something went wrong badly enough where it looks like it's closed the document and isn't allowing.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have to look at it. Okay, do you want to start another one, Garrett? Then?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Why don't you create that? Yeah. Are people adding things there? Okay. Okay. Yeah, because I'm not seeing much here. So, what I would suggest, Garrett, you're going to set up a new one there?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So let me know when it's ready.
So try to delete it. Yeah, I'm trying to still those techniques for a while. So I don't understand why.
Yeah, still on the way. Look like you said, it's a bit.
And you'll share it with everyone, right? Anyone who has the URL can create it or modify it.
I'm almost there.
Okay, great. And then you'll create a tiny URL.
Already done.
Okay.
Right, so it's the same URL. It's IDM.
Okay, folks. Sorry, there was some sort of glitch there. I'm not sure what it is. Okay, it's the same one with what? 2 at the end.
There is a 1 following it. So
Okay, ICM create CL1. Sorry about that. We're going to have to look in for what happened there. We have not seen that before, but that is Murphy's Law. Okay.
Probably due to the large amount of collaborators.
It could be. Okay, 1 at the end. Yeah. ICM 2016 create CL1. So in other words, it's just like this. Okay, there you go. Thank you, Garrett. Much appreciated.
How do you delete shapes or linkages?
You click on them, and then you press the delete button. Okay, so by clicking on them, it should show you their properties, and then if you press delete, they should go away. Okay?
Does it always need one? Because there's one you can't delete.
No, no. Okay, it should be able to have have none at all. I'd have to look at that. Is this for the new diagram or the old one?
The new one.
The new one. So this create. Okay, quality of life. Oh well, yeah. Yeah, you should be able to delete that if anyone wanted to.
You can delete race.
You can't delete race. I think that's the old one. You want to do this create CL1.
Oh, all right.
Okay. Okay, are you folks getting to this one? Create CL1? Okay, so what's happening here?
We were in CL.
Okay, do this one, tinyurl.com, ICM 2016 create CL1. Garrett told me something appeared to have happened with the document.
So we have to change mine.
What's that? Okay, I see people adding things in.
We add.
You've got 2 stigmatizations. Okay, I see something happening there. Garrett, are you monitoring it?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I haven't seen any issues yet with it, so that's good.
Okay, create CL1. Yeah, here we go. Okay, there's a stigmatization. Okay. Most people's screens are going to be bigger than mine, so you could see what that leads to. Quality of life. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I should go show this other diagram, shouldn't you? There you go. Yeah. There you go. It looks like people were taking liberties, which is understandable. That's fine. It's a participatory process. Yeah. Where's quality of life in this? It's got to be. Meanwhile, I'll adjust this a bit. Okay. Okay. So see if you can start to build this in. I see some things being added. Wow. Nutrition is being added even as we speak. Okay. That's great.
Nutrition is already there.
Okay. Okay, I see a link being provided to it. Garrett, there's no way to scroll over in this version, is there? Hey.
Not currently, no.
Yeah, okay.
You can scroll down, but not over.
Oh, really? Okay, scrolling down through.
On the side of the page, there's a.
Eventually,
there will actually be one on the.
I see.
On the paper itself, but right now it's just on the side of the page. Oh, actually, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there is a scroll bar there.
Oh, okay.
Aware of that.
Okay, that's great. So what Garrett's saying is, if any of you are having trouble fitting the whole diagram in there, there's actually a scroll bar. You could scroll around both horizontally and vertically on the sides. So I see this taking place. I'll switch back to the main diagram so you can see that. Okay. Yes. Offline, no. This does need to be connected. It's a great question because Google Docs now supports some offline editing, and in syncing can sometimes lead to conflicts because other people modified the same thing, and that's a sophisticated area. It's an area of potential that we could look into. It requires a lot of logic to kind of deal with the situation. There may be some obvious cases where the 2 people add 2 different variables, and you can both add them both, and you'll be done. But if someone changed the name of this variable and you changed it to something different, how do you resolve that conflict? It's a technical question with some challenges. Okay. Yeah, it's open source. So Sure. It's so you would go to causaldiagram.usask.ca. Now, as I said earlier, this is in beta. I mean, it's early beta. This is barely out of alpha. And you know, I'm grateful for the patience being shown by people here to try this out. This has been the product of a couple undergrads work part-time since January, and we have a high priority for refining it in a number of ways. And in the interests of time, maybe I'll just mention a couple of those ways, okay? Number one, we're interested in adding to the software the ability to select multiple things so that you could drag or delete or otherwise enlarge or change the color of multiple things. We believe that it's really important that we can add in not only stock shapes but flows to this so that we can have stocks and flows represented in system structure diagrams in a really rich way. We'd like to have greater awareness of what other people are doing. You may have noticed when someone moves a variable, all you see is it suddenly appear over here. You don't see it being dragged. And that's really important for the conventions. My colleague, Carl Gutwin, who's been is an expert in these collaborative cooperative computer work area, he tells me that the visual cues from that help people avoid conflicting. It avoids me trying to interrupt something, avoids the risk of me having a conflict with you. Because if I see you dragging, I know I'm not going to touch it right now. So there's some conventions which grow up around these things. Another thing that that we're seeking to add to this is the ability to capture stories associated with links, so that when someone adds a link, they could give a justification or a story. They could say, we know from this evidence that this is a connection, or I've seen this many times in my clients, or the literature has many case studies of where we see this linkage or what have you. And similarly, we'd like to keep an audit trail of who added what to the diagram, so that after the fact, think about 100 people in a room, right? We have 15 here, 20, adding things in here. But we'd like to be able to know who was it who added this or changed or suggested this as a name. Who was it that added this link, so that we could go back to them and perhaps debrief with them and talk about their experiences more. So we'd like to be able to have audio recording and auditing that's really woven into it. Now, when it comes to the issue of audio and supporting audio within this system, right now I said we left that to Skype and Google Hangouts because we didn't want to get into that as a high priority for the very first versions. But there's something to be said about being able to capture dialogues taking place around the creation of this between the different participants. They're saying things back and forth. I really think it should be this is the name, or that's how we used to think about it, but now we think about it this other way, or what have you. And the ability to capture that audio with the diagram might be valuable. And similarly, to allow for commenting on things. I love the idea of voting on names or voting on links or what have you, and to be able to make that a transparent process. That's empowering. It's empowering for the group coming to consensus and to understand the diversity of opinions being represented. I'll be with you in just a second. We also want to make sure that these sort of diagrams can be built up in a co-located settings with maximal effect. So I don't know if you folks are familiar with it, but there's quite a lot of interest in some quarters in these things called surface computers, which are basically table-like computers. It might be the size of this table, maybe a little bit larger. And multiple participants could be around there, and they could be dragging things and putting down connections. And then there may be people remotely also interacting on their surface devices. That's a more expensive option. Those sort of equipment aren't super cheap, but Microsoft Surface is a very impressive piece of technology. Being able to leverage that would be very desirable. There's a lot of usability issues with this. We're very aware of the fact that it's kind of clunky. As I told you, it's a little bit buggy still. Sometimes I fill out the information, I click, and it doesn't actually add a variable immediately, and I've got to go into it. And obviously, we had to change course there for a moment because of our old diagram developing some sort of problems. But I hope that from this session, the potential for this is obvious. Again, this is a product of a couple undergrads work for about half a year, part-time. And if we could put some serious effort into this over the next year, maybe even get a full-time person on it, there's a lot of ways this can go. And Garrett has been doing an amazing amount of work to sort of take it to the next level in terms of smoothness and easiness of use. But what I value the most is feedback from the community about what things would be most valuable here. Colors, or sizes, ability to hide things. Many of you will know that in Vensim, for example, you can have multiple hiding levels. So you can label some things as being always presented and then some things as being presented only when you unfold it a certain number of times. We could add that in if there was a community demand for it. But we need to have a sense of priorities because we have limited development, effort, and time. It takes time to roll these things out. As I noted, it's an open source system, and we'd be interested in collaborations which could bring other people to the table. But one idea of this is to make it available as a community resource on an ongoing basis, and to take it out of our University of Saskatchewan, and put it out there in a free way that would allow for greater scalability and use by other teams as well as contributions and extending it. So those are a few issues that come to mind on limitations. A lot of trade-offs of this that we don't fully understand now. I mentioned earlier the physical diagrams, creating them in a space that's limited with magic marker, with sticky tack and strings or elastic bands or whatever technologies you use. That has some real trade-offs associated with it, including some limitations. This has big limitations, obviously. There's big limitations technology-wise right now. Maybe there's limitations we don't fully understand. Think about going to, lower-income neighborhoods that are technology. There's a real digital divide, and they don't have much access to technology, and saying we're going to use this tool in a computer classroom. That might be intimidating. That might not bring out all the voices there. So how could we hybridize this with other techniques, or in what situations would you want to use one or another? These are important questions, but I think there is a lot of potential, and there's potential with tools like this for going beyond what we can do with a physical representation in terms of capturing stories, justifications, audit trails, so we can understand who contributed what at what time and for what reason. Okay? Yeah?
Yeah, first, I just want to say this is really exciting. I was involved in an effort last year to do something similar, but then our funding ended up falling through. But so I'd love to talk to you more about this. But one thing I was wondering is this seemed pretty geared towards real-time collaboration.
Right.
Have you thought much about the needs of asynchronous collaboration? Primarily,
right.
You mentioned annotating those images, but also
commenting.
maybe annotating a chunk of the diagram, or having
right.
a version control, and having it be more of an interactive, but more in a versioning archive kind of way.
It's a great point, and of course Google Docs provides some examples of some of those things, right? With a version history that you can go back to previous versions, and I think that would be sort of the desirable model. In its sister product for agent-based and hybrid modeling, which includes system dynamics as a piece of that, we're interested in leveraging the Google Drive API, and in fact, that other system does very well. And I think one thing that comes out of that would be, I believe, the ability to tap into that successive versions. So you could go back to a previous one. So that's a great point, and it's one I'll ask Arent to take down, the issue of having successive versions. I do think the idea of annotating things with comments, leaving them for people, right? I'm concerned about this getting too complicated, or we need to split this part, how about we split this off for a hierarchical submodel? We carve out this section and this section and turn it into a nested diagram or something like that. Being able to make those annotations on whole areas, like you say, could be really valuable. So that's another great suggestion.
And we were thinking too
Yeah.
about one of the strengths of an interactive tool for CLD, the computerized tool,
Yep.
could be to facilitate the process of people interacting with or seeing the system behavior embedded in the
Right,
CLD.
right.
So, maybe a feedback loop could be automatically detected. The system behavior of an exponential graph
Yep.
could be kind of you could dig into that, and the computer could help facilitate the process of this system
Yep.
behavior looks like this. Is
Right.
that what you want? This implies
Sure.
that this, to kind of help them do some of that facilitation that a person would do.
I like that idea. I think with a few extra additions that could go even further. For example, one thing we lack right now, despite hopes I had for the first couple months, we didn't actually add in delay marks, for example, which might help distinguish a negative feedback loop that leads directly to negative exponential behavior. Distinguish that from one that leads to some oscillations, potentially damped oscillations. But I see no reason we couldn't do a good job with the area of discovering feedbacks of various sorts. Now, there are a combinatorial number of feedbacks that occur within diagrams like this, and highlighting the most relevant ones. Well, that gets into this question this gentleman over here with we'd like the ability to highlight arrows that are of more significance, potentially, for example, show feedbacks that we believe are particularly important to understand in thicker lines, for example, and maybe focus attention on some of those feedbacks. So I think there's some really interesting ideas about where that could go, and potentially its interaction with animations or something like that, right? Maybe as a tool for storytelling. I don't know if you folks are familiar with this Insight Maker tool. My colleague Jeff McDonald has a whole dozens of diagrams in it. I haven't used it that much, but one thing that Jeff has kind of nudged it toward, and where it really has helped it along, is a tool for storytelling with the diagrams, where you can successfully unfold the diagram and tell narrated stories with annotations or what have you that kind of walk you through the process of understanding what's going on, what the model is seeking to communicate, what insights you can draw from it. So I think there's potential for that, and that will be a nice thing to try to tap into. Other questions or comments? So we've done all this unfunded. This has just been, it was a fourth-year project for some undergrads and so on. We've also applied for funding for some related work, but we were turned down their first pass, and we're going to be going for a second round in the fall. But I think there's a lot of opportunities for these sort of collaborative tools in the participatory context, particularly for bringing in people who just can't get to those meetings because of personal circumstances or physical condition or socioeconomic limitations, and to really help bring to the fore other voices that might otherwise not be heard within these sessions. I see people have added a lot of components here and have done some good work in kind of using some of the audiovisual tools here. I'm just going to take a peek here. It's not an exact replication of the original diagram, but that's fine. I hope you folks have enjoyed enjoyed modifying it, and I hope more to the point that it's really given you some sense of the possibilities associated with this tool. Okay? Yeah, so additional questions, yes?
So this tool is not available for usage yet.
You can go use it.
But you managing it, right? Like how do I apply it if I want to?
Well, I mean, it's a good question.
Management control will be.
I mean,
will be under my control.
yeah, I mean, we're managing it in the sense that we are, we're hosting it and so on. We're not managing it in the sense that we are limiting what's going on there and so on. Okay, excuse me. Let me just get to a web browser here. If you go to causaldiagram.usas.ca right now, you can go create your own diagram, and then you can share it with other people. So we're not restricting that. So this is a new diagram. Every time you go there, it creates a new diagram, and you could say my diagram, and you can go put things on it and share it with other people. It's not like you have to write to us to create a diagram for you or anything like that. Once you've done this and once you've shared it, by so doing, you are also adding it to your Google Drive. And so you can go find it in Google Drive and you can say, I want to share this with these people only for viewing and this other group for editing and all that sort of stuff. So I guess if you say we control it, at a loose level, we're certainly rolling out new versions of this. We're trying to engage in bug fixing. We're trying to make extensions to this. And so it's possible that occasionally the site will go down for a day while we roll out a major upgrade, but we'll try to let people know about that. But
That's good. I thought I had to have Garrett on the phone if I wanted.
No. Garrett is not needed, as although I'm sure he's up for bid. Garrett, you're not needed to as the man behind the curtain here, are you?
No. I just knew how to make the diagram really quickly there for the public thing.
Yeah.
That's why I did that.
He just created it quickly so that I wouldn't have to in front of people, go share it with, because we have to set the sharing permissions so that you folks could only view the first diagram, could edit the second one, and that would have required me to fob Google Drive for a few minutes, and I didn't want to bother you with that. So thankfully he did it, and he set up the tiny URLs and all that good stuff. But you can just go there and create a new diagram. So it's in beta phase. As in this session, I've appreciated your patience, and I appreciate your feedback both greatly. If you're interested in trying it out more and want to give us feedback about how to improve it, we're welcome to do that. We are just starting to collaborate with someone in our department who is an expert in human-computer interaction and in computer-supported cooperative work. And his name is Carl Gutwin. He's going to be working with us to try to improve the usability of this system. We're well aware of the fact that it has lots of rough edges. Beyond bugs, it's not as easy to use as you'd like. It's awkward in some ways. It's unnecessarily troublesome to do certain things. So we're going to be working to improve that. Our early experience suggests real potential here, but we're very interested in doing usability studies, which might compare the experience of participants in a controlled way using a tool like this versus doing causal loop diagramming in a setting under traditional circumstances, and try to understand the trade-offs. Not that one is always better than the other, but what are the different issues that come to the fore in user experience or in participant experience in each of those settings. What are the advantages of both? Do we have to think about hybrid models that might appeal to different subsets of groups, with each technique, etc. Okay, any other questions? Was there one over here? Question or comment? Any other comments, questions? Yeah.
It's not a question. Maybe I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
I understand all the the method here, the
Sure.
causal loop.
Causal loop diagrams, yeah.
Diagram. So this is different from the system dynamic model.
Well, yeah, I mean, often causal loop diagramming, not always, but often it's used in the very earliest stages of a engagement that leads on to dynamic modeling, and particularly system dynamics modeling. So often we divide up, and I had a diagram in my presentation yesterday. For I think it's this one here. Yes. That might help in understanding this. This was a presentation I gave in this room yesterday, and broadly we can divide up full scope modeling project into a set of phases, and there's lots of ways this could be critiqued, but often when we think about modeling with dynamic modeling, we think about a model that's formulated and we're using it to analyze behavior over time, for example. And that's dealing with issues sort of downstream for this. But before you get to this model, before you get to a model that can be simulated, can be run, whether it's an agent-based model, a system dynamics model, or a discrete event model, you have a key set of challenges, which in some ways are defining challenges about framing the problem. Understanding the research questions or the problem that you're trying to address with this model. What are you trying to gain out of this modeling project? Are you trying to bring together stakeholders to have them come to consensus about this pressing environmental issue or this health issue, people from prevention and infection control stages? Or are you trying to give very quantitative policy recommendations about these couple different interventions? Trying to understand what it is you're trying to achieve, the purpose of the model, and then trying to determine the model boundary, the model scope that will be appropriate for that purpose, for starting out towards that purpose, is really, really important. And often what people find when I teach modelers, as I do for my undergrads, my graduate courses, and my boot camps worldwide, a lot of the challenges that they encounter are here, but often these are the challenges which are more difficult for them to first kind of grapple with, because they occur early on in the modeling project and they're somewhat less crisp than the challenges in this phase, technically. So you're trying to get your head around what should my model include and what should it not include. At what level of detail should it characterize certain behavior? What are the key variables in the model? What are the key sort of aspects of behavior in the real world, what we call in system dynamics reference modes or patterns in agent-based modeling, spatial temporal patterns. What are those patterns that I'm interested in explaining or interested in replicating, etc.? So it's often this qualitative problem mapping phase and problem conceptualization phase where people first fall flat because they don't know how to start going from what they want to do to an actual model that they could start to work with. And causal loop diagramming attempts to get them going at this phase, particularly in a way that's accessible to stakeholders, so that you can talk with stakeholders and elicit their understanding of a system that they're engaged in without the barriers of mathematics to get in the way. You don't require the stakeholders to go write differential equations. You instead engage them with a way of diagramming that has quantitative underpinnings at a certain level. It's semi-quantitative, but at the same time, it's not overwhelming. And it turns out these causal loop diagrams have an interesting balance because you have polarities associated with links that have a certain degree of specificity. It forces you to think, if I increase this, does it increase or decrease this other variable, all of the things being equal compared to the value it otherwise would have had. A mouthful, to be sure, but it forces you to think about the relationship between variables in a mechanistic way. And that's really important to start to move towards a quantitative model. And sometimes what you're eliciting with causal loop diagrams is, people, what's going on in the trenches of the system. Other times it's people's perceptions of the system, which are also interesting because they may demonstrate challenges for people for changing the system. If they misperceive this aspect, that may be something you want to try to address in interventions. So anyway, causal loop diagrams are very useful for system dynamics modeling, particularly in the very earliest phases of the project to scope out a model. Are those comments helpful?
Yeah, yes.
I haven't done it justice, but those are some crude comments.
Dr. Oscar,
Yes.
I think you gave it more than justice. That was excellent. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much. Okay, grateful for everyone. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for your participation. Hi, Gary. Great to see you.
Good to see you too. That was great. One other thing also so that I might support with that tool showed you much additional functionality is kind of the pre-causal modeling stage. We often do physical hexagons.
Yes.
Just listen to a lot of ideas and then get people to cluster them.
Group them and so on. Yeah.
Make that the beginning of a causal diagram.
So maybe a phase could be supported in here of kind of grouping things in that way. I like that idea a lot. I haven't actually done a lot of that myself. I know Gould Kreutzer used to do that a lot with the hexagons.
Some of
and
those
so on back
folks
in the
have
day.
migrated to rethink health and so
Stuff that you showed
Oh,
us in
interesting.
that
still doing that.
Okay, I'd be really interested if you could give me any sort of up-to-date references on best practices in that area. It would kind of clue me into, because my knowledge in it is, decades old now. Or if you could point me to, any videos or other elements that might clue me in to sort of help people do
I
it.
work closely with Rebecca Niles,
Yeah.
who's part of that group, and
Right.
is now part of our group. So
Great.
bless her, she's got
Grateful. Yeah. Thanks a bunch. Yeah, it's wonderful to see you, and I appreciate the feedback.
Okay, you're going to be in Delft?
Unfortunately, I'm not. I've got a course that I'm teaching in Michigan. So.
See you.
Okay, take care there. Yeah.
Dr. Ascott, Miles
Yes.
McNall.
Yes.
I'm glad
Miles.
we finally have a chance to
Yes,
meet. I know
it's a
you're,
great pleasure.
working with Connie.
Yes,
Willis.
that's right. Connie and several others. Yeah.
Good to see you. I'm so glad you could come to the
No,
conference.
it's an honor to be here. So thank you very much. It's been a wonderful conference. I've really enjoyed the other speakers and
Great.
enjoyed sitting in on the session. So I'm really grateful.
I hope you consider coming back sometime.
Oh yeah, no,
All
it'd be a real honor. Maybe we could update in the next year what's going on with this.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Thank you, Miles.
Thank
Chris?
you for both of your presentations.
Oh.
Those were great, and I need this. Are you going to be in Delft?
Unfortunately, I'm not. I just mentioned to Gary, I've got in late July, I'm teaching a week-long course at University of Michigan. I'm actually going to be back here in another month, but I'd be happy to talk about how this could be used with your work. I'm such an admirer of your work.
Well, thank you. And I'm an admirer of your work, too.
Oh, that's very kind.
I've been very impressed. My immediate need, which this, I don't know if you'd be interested in this. Khalid Saeed asked me if I would be willing to create an online course